welcome to Hitchhiker's Guide to Humanity. This is Krys. I'm the human for the alien Crystal, and I'm here with Roni, my co-host. She is the human for the alien Mako. And we have a special guest today, Silas Kuira. He is our Kikuyu friend, and you remember him from a previous episode of Hitchhikers. And today he's returned to talk more about his Kikuyu culture. So welcome, Silas. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey guys, thank you for having me again. Good to be back.
And welcome, Roni. Thank you for coming in today and talking with Silas and kind of guiding this conversation for us.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. And so welcome everybody to this episode.
So we're going to start off first with rites of passage in the Kikuyu culture. So Silas, can you kind of give us an idea, first off, of what rites of passage are does a young person in Kikuyu culture go throughout their life?
Oh, all right. Well, when it comes to the Kikuyu, there's two rites of passage. Of course, there's the males and the females. There are several stages in life, but mainly the main one is the rite of passage from boyhood to manhood, and in the case of women, to womanhood. The next rite of passage may be marriage itself, if you could think of it as a rite of passage. And then finally, if you get to grow old enough, you'll become an elder in the Kikuyu culture.
Oh, that's awesome.
I hope you got that. So when we talk of rites of passage, most of the time we're thinking about the from boyhood to manhood, around teenage years, around puberty.
Awesome. So let's start off with that first tradition there, the rite of puberty. And do you want to start with just pick, male or female and start with one, and then we'll flip to the other?
Well, they are kind of similar. From the beginning, they were similar because they are all based on circumcision. When you get to a certain age, which is called a Rika, that is RICA. When you get to that age, around 12 to 13 years, you were supposed to be circumcised as a symbolic ceremony of now you're a man. And particularly for the boys, let me start with the boys. Boys were not very privileged in Kikuyu society, because like I told you last time, it was a matriarchal society. So women used to kind of rule. So being a man was less in the hierarchy, and being a boy was even less. Hello?
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I can hear you.
Oh, yes, you can see. Sorry, my PC had done something. So what happened is a boy was the transition from boyhood to manhood was dramatic, because all of a sudden you became a somebody. When you were a boy, you were almost a nobody. You even slept with the livestock, because there used to be a room in the center of the homestead to protect the livestock, and the boys usually used to spend the night with the livestock, the goats and the sheep. So once he became a man, all of a sudden he's a person of note, and he even has his own room now. He has his own separate room. He has his own freedom. He can speak now. He can be heard, not just seen. So it was quite dramatic for the boys. There also used to be female genital mutilation, the circumcision, but with time it was dropped. The Kikuyu are one of the tribes that significantly dropped the practice of female circumcision, because they learned, the missionaries who came, they educated them and told them that it was not healthy for the girls. So this knowledge started to come in, and over time, almost 100%, there is no more female circumcision among the Kikuyu, but it is there among some tribes in Kenya. It's still there. So that is a significant rite of passage, circumcision. Or Yeah. Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, so a few questions came up for me. So I'm really happy to hear that the amount of female circumcision has dropped down to almost nothing. So I do have a question about, does that the stories of the boys sleeping with the livestock all the way up until they were 12, does that also apply to the girl children, or were the girl children able to sleep in the house?
Well, the girls were sleeping in the house. They were helping their mothers. They lived quite normal lives, and they had a much happier lives than the boys because of that history of it was very matriarchal for the Kikuyu. So it's odd. It's an oddity. It's not the usual thing. But girls were known they will soon be married off. They will bring a lot of livestock to the homestead because a lot of bride price, the dowry, would be paid once they grow up and are married off. So they were kind of valued. They had some kind of value from the beginning. But the boys didn't have much value. They were just the herds boys. The work was to keep the herds and the chickens, and they were not really considered. And it was assumed that boys are tough, that they can handle nature, they can handle the elements of weather and such. They can take care of themselves. So it was a very Spartan-like introduction to the world for boys. It come out as a boy and grow up in the Kikuyu culture. You came out very tough,
And
because
so
you had yeah.
does that still happen today in Kikuyu culture, or in modern times has that switched to being more equal between male and female children?
Well, it has become more equal since now children go to school. But you know, some of these traditions, they trickle down to the even in modern times. Generally speaking, Kikuyu men are just left to be they're introduced to toughness from the beginning, from their childhood. They're introduced to working in the farms, doing odd jobs. They are very familiar with the survival. They're expected to be self-sufficient very early. So that's the remnants of the farm life. So even if you grow up in the city, you had a taste of that. You had an idea of that. And then in school, when you finish elementary school and before you go to secondary school, around 14 years old, that's when most Kikuyu boys, even today, they go for some circumcision just before going to high school.
And that's interesting because in other cultures, usually male children are circumcised as infants. And of course, here in Europe, most men are not circumcised at all because there is just no religious history of it or tribal history of it. And there's no medical need for it. So the other questions I have for you are, so when you were growing up personally, did you also experience that sleeping out in the livestock, or was your family more modern?
Well, fortunately for me, I was born in the city. I did not experience that, but we had farms. We had farms. The central province where most Kikuyus come from, and surrounding counties is a short distance. It's an hour's drive. So we used to go to the farm over the weekends, over the holidays. We used to go to the farms, and because of that, I knew about farming and the labor involved, all of these things. I remember the first time I watched a movie about cotton slaves in America. I could directly relate to them because I knew what it means to be out in the sun for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, I picked cotton myself, so yeah.
So, but being from the city, I was spared a lot of that.
Yeah, so that's really interesting that you've also, you know, experienced that farm life growing up. So my question to you is, when you were growing up in Kikuyu culture, in what ways were you taught this is how to be a Kikuyu man?
Once you're going through the circumcision, right? There's one of your uncles comes by. It's done for a whole group. So all your cousins who are the same age, all your friends who are the same age, they go through it and they interact with your uncles, and they are taught about how to be men. They're taught values. They're taught solidarity. It's almost military. And then you don't live with your parents anymore. You don't live in the same house as your parents anymore. You have a room that's separate from your parents' house.
And this starts at what age?
At 14 years old, just before you go to high school.
That's really young.
Can I jump in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You say that at 14 or thereof, you stop living with your parents. In the Luo culture, when a man is grown or a woman is grown, you cannot sleep in your parents' house, even if you come to visit. Even if I get married and my mom comes to visit me, she cannot sleep in my house. But I have seen on occasion, Kikuyus not having a problem with that. The man comes and just sleeps in that house. The woman, the mother-in-law comes and just sleeps in that house. Or is my any of that wrong?
Yeah, it's okay. It's similar, but and most tribes have that similar culture where the man is not supposed to sleep in the same house with the parents. But because we're so squeezed, for example, I'm from the city and it's so squeezed, so they had to build an extension of a house for me and my brother. We had to build an extension outside, just symbolic that you're not sleeping in the same house with your parents. But I think because the whole of Central Province and those of us who live in Nairobi is so squeezed, it's overlooked. It's overlooked a lot. Yes,
because in laws that is one taboo area. That is one thing that just does not happen. We believe so strongly in that. If my mom comes to visit me, she cannot sleep in my house. It is considered like taboo, like seriously.
That's completely opposite from Western culture as well.
You go to your neighbor and ask for a place for your parents to sleep.
I see. So if you don't have your own place, you have to go you have to sort yourself somehow.
Yeah, you have to go to a neighbor or a friend and ask for a place for your mom to be sleeping or for your parents to be sleeping when they're in town visiting you.
And in Western culture, that's completely opposite. If you are coming to visit your parents, you're usually expected to spend the night, at least one night. So that's fascinating to me. Now, my question on both of those is, how do you continue to maintain those cultural norms in this millennial and Zoomer age where we can't afford separate housing as much anymore? Like I know in America, especially older children now are moving back in with their parents because they cannot afford their own home, especially during a pandemic. So how is that able to be managed, or are you making more and more exceptions in the culture for that?
You see, there's the kid moving in with your parents when you're grown. That is allowed in as far as the Luo culture is concerned. That we do not have a problem with that. But your parent coming into your matrimonial home and sleeping there, spending the night there, sleeping there, that is what is not allowed. So even if you cannot afford it, I remember when my grandmother used to come and visit us in Nairobi here, we used to ask a neighbor or a friend to host her for the days that she's in Nairobi. So she will spend the whole day with us in our house But when she wants to go to bed, we have to take her to the other house to go and sleep there, because we could not obviously afford, at that time we could not afford a hotel for her to spend the night in, or a separate housing for her. So we had to go and ask for a friend or a neighbor to host her during the night. We have also hosted grandmothers of friends of mine at our place who could not afford separate housing for their parents, but the parents had come to visit, or maybe they'd come for medication or something of the sort. So yeah, that is how we just do it in the Luo culture.
Now, while I would like to, pull back to my Western mindset of this, sounds like a lot of ritual things that don't really serve a purpose. On the other hand, I can kind of see the fact that it does bring the community together. And so, like, by having the parents spend the night at your neighbor's house, they actually kind of integrate into the community a little better, and your neighbor understands you a little better because now they've met your parents. So I do see that there can be some benefits from that. Is there a particular reason behind why this is done, or do you see any other benefits from holding to these old traditions?
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's a matter of taboos. There are so many taboos that keep some morality in the community, and they were considered important, and there may be a good point to that, because the more we get westernized, the more we lose those morals, and there's become so much disrespect, and the social structure just kind of collapses. So there is nostalgia for those traditions, but we don't have the luxury sometimes, because we've run out of space, we've run out of time. We are now in the rat race nowadays. That's my take about it.
Yeah, so it seems like, and Ronnie, did you have anything to add to that as far as things that you noticed?
I think it is just the way Silas has said, just the taboos. It's something that we've grown up knowing. I particularly don't really even know or have heard of something happening if my mom comes into my house and spends the night. I don't know. I'm not sure if at the back of my mind I know that nothing will really happen. It's not like she's going to die or I'm going to die, but we've just grown up with that. That is what has been taught. We've been taught, and that is what we've been told to believe, that it is wrong. Taboos, it is a taboo, and chira. So I don't know if you remember, I told you about something called chira in Luo language. If you go against these traditions and norms, Luos believe that chira will befall you, and something bad will happen to you. You will die, or that person will die, or diseases will follow you, something of the sort. So that fear of that chira thing, or fear that is just respecting the traditions and respecting the way things have been done, that is just what continues to drive some of these traditions. Not really that anything big is going to happen to you, or or it's contributing to something, like something really big or something of the sort. It's just fear and respect.
That's interesting. So do you think that you also keep the other traditions in both Kikuyu and Luo cultures out of that fear of taboo? Like because the research shows that there's not really any benefits to circumcision at all. In fact, that removing the foreskin actually removes like 40,000 nerve cells, and that it can also lead to sexual problems later in life for men. So there's not really any medical reason to continue doing it. What benefits are there in the tribe, or what benefits do the tribe see with keeping something like circumcision as part of that rite of passage?
We don't do circumcision in the Luo culture. Actually, I have a question to Silas on this, because us, being that we do not circumcise, or we're not required by our traditions to circumcise. Yeah, but we are not required to circumcise our boys. But so we do not have ceremonies like you do, teaching our boys this and that. You just go into a medical clinic and you're circumcised, and that's it. Are there Kikuyus who also opt to just walk into a medical institution and get circumcised, as opposed to following the normal traditional way and the ceremonies that are involved? Because I know that's those teachings, that is a big part of Kikuyu circumcision.
Yeah, actually, in Kikuyus jumped to have a way of mixing modernity with the tradition. Actually, all Kikuyus today are circumcised in a hospital. I was circumcised in a hospital. So yeah, and it's inculcated. But I know that other Bantu tribes like the Luya, they do it the old-fashioned way on the river with the mud and with a traditional circumciser.
Oh, that sounds painful.
yeah, and it's quite old school the way they do it. But we have integrated it with modernity. So you have the ritual before you go to hospital. Then you go to hospital, all of you. And then when you come out of hospital, you start eating the traditional food. We eat black-eyed peas to heal.
I miss black-eyed peas. Haven't had those since America.
So they help you heal faster, and so we have integrated it. And I know for the Luo, they have something they do with their teeth. The men do something with their teeth. I don't know if that applies.
Not really nowadays. Yeah.
So what was that when in the past, what would they do with their teeth?
They'd remove the lower teeth.
The lower teeth, wow. Like all of them?
Yeah. No, not all of them. The middle.
The front ones.
The front lower teeth, yeah.
Wow. Is there any reason behind that? What the reasoning was for removing the teeth?
It was just like a rite of passage, like the circumcision, but we don't have circumcision, so it was just one of the rites of passage. But my grandfather had his teeth, so going back like that long, it's something that has been phased out, at least in most part of the Luo community. It has been phased out.
Interesting. And so for just as like a comparison to that, you know, our Western audience that may be listening may be saying, wow, like I am, wow, that's an interesting thing to know, or like, how could they do that? But we've also in Western culture done a lot of very strange things as well. Like in America during the early 1900s, it was very popular to give yogurt enemas to little boys to keep them from masturbating. So if we really want to like compare weird traditions here, America's got Africa beat on weirdness for that. So yeah. So this is a fascinating look into like the different things that have been done throughout history. It's interesting to see the modernizations that are coming in, especially making sure that the boys get access to clean resources, to medical help, and during that process, if they choose to do circumcision. So here is another question for you that I'd like to bring up when we come back, but just to leave our audience thinking of it. What happens when a child is born that is intersex, that actually has parts of both male and female? How are they brought into the culture there? So if you have any thoughts on that, then we'll talk about it in our next segment, and we'll be back then with some more talking about rites of passage, specifically the marriage rite of passage. And see you later, guys. Thanks.